this piece of paper. It is a blue Zimbabwean banknote from 2008, and printed right on the front are the words $100 trillion. At the height of the country's economic crisis, a single sheet of toilet paper actually held more purchasing power than a $100 billion note. Currency is supposed to be a reliable measure of a nation's sovereign value. When a country's money literally becomes worth less than the paper it's printed on, you are looking at a catastrophic systemic failure. These failures usually start with a massive unpayable bill. In 1919, the newly formed Weimar Republic in Germany inherited a staggering 1.44 billion marks in debt from World War I. Modern governments fall into the exact same trap. In the late 1990s, Zimbabwe needed millions of dollars a month to secretly fund military operations in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, rapidly depleting their monetary reserves. Faced with debts they cannot pay, politicians have a choice. They can enact highly unpopular measures, like slashing public spending and raising taxes. Or they can take what looks like an easy way out, turning on the money printers. Choosing to print money triggers an economic rule known as the quantity theory of money. We can visualize this choice with a simple balance scale. On one side is a country's money supply, on the other, the physical goods available. If you flood the system with new currency, but your economy doesn't produce new goods to match, the scale tips. Prices skyrocket to absorb the extra cash, and you are caught in an inescapable trap. At first, running the printing presses actually feels like a magic trick. The economy seems to heal itself. By 1921, Weimar Germany's strategy of printing money to pay its bills had rapidly shrunk the national debt and virtually eliminated unemployment, driving it down to just 1.8%. Many politicians and powerful industrialists actively encouraged the printing. They were taking out short-term loans from the central bank to expand their businesses, and the rising inflation drastically reduced the real value of what they eventually had to pay back. But the facade eventually cracks. The sheer volume of printed paper begins to vastly outpace the physical goods actually available to buy. When a flood of cash chases a shrinking pool of real resources, like when Zimbabwe's government confiscated commercial farmland and collapsed their domestic food production, the illusion shatters, and the hyperinflationary spiral officially begins. Instead of shedding off the printers, desperate governments usually panic. They try to hack the economic system with increasingly flawed policies. Venezuela tried to cure its inflation by implementing strict price controls on staple foods. The mandates forced producers to sell at a loss, which simply bankrupted local businesses, emptied store shelves, and birthed massive black markets. Following World War II, Hungary tried a different tactic. They introduced the adopengo, a secondary tax currency whose value was adjusted daily by the government in an attempt to outpace the devaluation of their regular money. It failed completely. As you can see on these high-denomination milpengo notes, the Hungarian National Bank was physically desperate to keep up with the math. Ultimately, everyday prices began doubling every 15 hours, forcing the government to issue bills worth up to 100 quintillion pengo. This relentless printing eventually triggers the final, fatal stage of hyperinflation. The public completely loses psychological trust in the currency. In 1923, two women in Berlin left a laundry basket full of millions of marks on the street for a few moments. Thieves stole the basket, but they dumped all the cash on the ground. The paper itself was deemed entirely worthless. At this stage, money ceases to be a reliable store of value. It becomes a toxic asset that citizens rush to spend the exact second they receive it. This German political cartoon perfectly captures the desperation of the era. People literally drowning in a sea of paper money while starving for bread. The human cost of this collapse is devastating. The middle class is effectively wiped out, and pensioners watch their entire life savings evaporate overnight. The cruelty of hyperinflation lies in who wins and who loses. Those holding massive debts or hard physical assets actually benefit, while ordinary citizens are reduced to bartering with coal and sausages just to survive. So how does a country fix a dead currency? You can't just chop a few zeros off the bills and expect prices to drop. Recovery requires extreme, painful measures to restore the single thing that gives money its power: public confidence. Germany's historical solution was to completely scrap the old, worthless mark. They introduced a brand new currency and tied its value to hard assets, legally preventing the government from endlessly printing more. Zimbabwe had to take an even more drastic route, known as formal dollarization. They abandoned their sovereign currency entirely and adopted foreign money, like the US dollar, to force stability back into their economy. Ultimately, money is a fragile psychological illusion sustained by trust. Once a government prints that trust away, no amount of ink can buy it back.